Mention the Carry On films anywhere in British culture and it instantly brings up a series of thoughts. Thoughts of sexual innuendo, daft tales of working class people, farcical historical epics, and a series of films that hasn't really stood the test of times. Consisting of 31 features between 1958 and 1992, plus some TV specials and plays, the series became something of a British institution and remain popular in many circles to this day. Were they any good though? The general consensus, even amongst the fans, is that no, they weren't. Likeable and fun, but also bawdy, sexist, and dated are just some of the words that are associated with them, and they don't adorn many, if any, best-of lists. It is, however, somewhat harsh to tarnish all the films in the series with the same brush. At one end you have the truly awful late entries into the series. Carry On Columbus in 1992 was an attempt to revive the films in the early 90s and should serve as a warning to anyone who thinks that making a new entry into the canon is a good idea. 14 years before that was Carry On Emmanuel in 1978, in which the series crossed the line from innuendo into a sex comedy spoof. That came soon after Carry On England in 1974, in which there was actual nudity and the play on the word focker that was cut by the BBFC. The film was also a commercial failure, as the public's taste for the series went the same direction as the box office receipts. At the other end of the scale, though, there are some subjectively decent comedies. Carry On Up the Khyber in 1968 may well be the high point, and it works as an odd satire on British rule in India. Carry On Cleo in 1964, Carry On Cowboy in 1965, Don't Lose Your Head in 1966, and Follow That Camel in 1967 managed to combine some good laughs with a sense of charm, and perhaps by nature of being historically set, have stood the test of time better than some of the others. And then there is Carry On Screaming in 1966, also set in the past albeit in the more recent Edwardian era, a film whom many would consider to be the smart answer to the question, what is the best Carry On film? A send-up on another British film institution, Hammer Horror, its storyline is surprisingly macabre and tapped into the popularity of the Addams Family, which was first serialised on television around the same time. Yet there is another aspect of the Carry On franchise that is often overlooked. They were, and remain, a fantastic example of low-budget filmmaking. Woody Allen once stated that in making approximately one film a year, he is bound to make at least one good one every now and then, and the same rule can sort of be applied here. They were churned out one after the other, resulting in some good, some bad, some really bad, and some merely indifferent films. The cast and crew worked with what they had. They made a series that travelled from ancient Rome to the Wild West, from India to the Sahara Desert to an African jungle, all without ever venturing much farther than southeast England. The cast were reportedly not paid particularly well, with Carry On stalwart Kenneth Williams once claiming that he was paid more for a television commercial than for any of the actual films. Yet they tended to be ensemble pieces, with recognisable recurring actors playing similar roles from one film to the next. What's quite remarkable is that every single Carry On filming schedule went to plan. Well, almost. Only one of the films required any additional shooting days, as bad weather on the set of Carry On Camping required the shoot to go over by just a solitary day. It was hardly Heaven's Gate, and serves to highlight the efficiency of the filmmaking at hand. They knew what they had, what they were working towards, what they were doing, where, how, and when. Was there ever any need for reshoots? Was there ever any money is perhaps more to the point, and the cast and crew had to work to tight constraints. The plot of Carry On Camping in 1965 saw the regulars meet up at a camping site in the height of British summer, which could present a problem when filming in late October and November, as they so did. Grass was painted green, and crucially elements of the plot centred around the fact that British summertime is rarely dry and warm. Mud and rain could be excused quite easily, thanks to a script that utilised the idea of unpredictable British weather to help overcome the filmmaking limitations of making a film set in the summer in the deep midwinter. Yet while making a British film set in Britain presented production hurdles which the cast and crew had to overcome, a film set in ancient Rome proved to be, ironically, less troublesome. After the production of 1963's Cleopatra moved from London to Rome, the sets and costumes were left behind. A filmmaking team that often worked with what was readily available suddenly had at their disposal some lavish production design. They wrote a comic parody of the Hollywood epic, shot it in 1964, and produced the best-looking film in the series, in glorious Technicolor. An opportunity was presented, and it was grabbed with both hands. Director Gerald Thomas and producer Peter Rogers knew full well that to make such costumes and sets would far exceed any budget they were likely to obtain. They could never get the budget, however, they could get the things they might want to spend the budget on. The success of the films in the 1960s, though, did mean they were able to branch out from Pinewood and its surrounding areas. Just. The beaches of Camber Sands in Sussex served as a double for the Sahara Desert in Follow That Camel, with the audacity of using the English seaside to make a film set in an extremely hot place wherein heat is actually part of certain plot points and gags. It's almost an inverse approach to the one utilised in Carry On Camping, but it worked. Perhaps most famously of all, a gate in Snowdonia was a stand-in for the Khyber Pass in Carrying Up the Khyber. This remains the furthest afield the productions ever ventured, and as has been joked, only the Carry On team could perhaps get away with using Wales as a mountain pass in Pakistan. Arguably, it adds to the charm. With both Khyber and Follow That Camel, the budgets were slightly increased due to the films being at the height of their popularity, yet the team didn't venture much further than the series' spiritual home of Pinewood Studios. By the time it came to Carry On Abroad in 1972, some of the cast even joked that they hoped the series would be taking them somewhere actually, well, abroad, but the studio backlot at Pinewood was as far as they got, Greater Slough actually doubling for Spain. In Carry On Doctor in 1968, Sid James was recovering from an illness, but his appearances were important for the series, so they wrote his character to be largely confined to bed for the film's duration. These tales are but a few of the stories that emphasise the smart ingenuity of the filmmakers to work within their means and time and budget. By staying close to the studio and the sets that had been built, there would have been little to no travel time involved from day to day, with the cast and crew able to position themselves in a single location for the duration of filming, and they made it look surprisingly convincing. It was like a production line of films that were churned out one after the other, with 30 of the films being made in a 20-year lifespan. Even the Bond films haven't got to that total, but then they're big-budget, globe-trotting productions that have been beset with the sort of production issues throughout the history that is par for the course. The Carry-On films represent that with little money, a formula that is popular with audience, some creative thinking and efficient filmmaking practices, an entire series can be produced. It is well established that of the 31 films, many of them are far from classics, with the most popular production starting in 1964 with Cleo and ending 6 years later with Carry On Up the Jungle. They were well loved by audience and were family friendly too. Innuendos were occasionally cut to get the film more accessible rating and increase revenue. Throughout the 60s, the films were amongst the most popular of the year in terms of box office returns in the UK. The decline arguably truly began in 1971 with Carry On At Your Convenience, which mocked the workers' unions of the time, many of whom formed a large base of the series' core audience. The jokes became cruder after that as well, especially in Carry On Girls in 1973 and then in 1974 with Carry On Dick, which marked the last appearances of many of the key cast. They were of their time, and like all film series tend to do, went on much longer than perhaps they should have done. Some things are best left in the past, even a British institution, as Carry On Columbus proved. They don't even resonate as much as the Ealing comedies which they sort of replaced. The likes of The Lady Killers, Kind Hearts and Coronets, and Passport to Pimlico are darker and more satirical films, especially the latter in the recent political climate, that are still held in high regard and pick up new fans to this day. The Carry On series, however, serves as a symbol to up-and-coming filmmakers. You might not have money, in fact that is a given, but much can be achieved with creative thinking, working with what is available, writing with the physical production in mind, and a well-run, efficient set.